Welcome into the Invest Well Show. I'm your host, Michael Wall. Hey, listen, we got a special guest that's joining us today, Dave Walker. He was a former U.S. comptroller for the federal government. He's done a lot of work in relation to fiscal policy and research and how to balance the budget. This is a guy that kind of knows a thing or two about fiscal responsibility, has some of the greatest access and insight to fiscal policy of probably anyone that I've met in the country. And Dave, first off, I just want to say thanks for joining us on the show today.
Michael, it's good to be with you. And let me clarify for people, what the Comptroller General is. In English, it's the Auditor General, the Chief Accountability Officer of the United States, and the CEO of something called the Government Accountability Office. And God knows we need more accountability.
You got that right. And, one of the things that I was intrigued by, full disclosure, we work with David on some other sides on the financial side, but when we were having conversation, you had mentioned to me, David, about the idea that one of the reasons you left is that you are not really able to implement some policy to promote and create changes. And so we wanted to talk today on this show a little bit about a few things that are happening in the world today. Obviously, Israel is on everybody's mind. The Speaker of the House being ousted is on everybody's mind. Continuing resolution, and what does that look like? And so why don't we start first, maybe initially, with this idea of Israel, because you wrote a book a little while back, America 2040, Still a Superpower. And it's interesting how that book is kind of coming to fruition in a lot of ways with some of the things that we're seeing globally. You want to take a minute and talk about that?
Sure, Michael. I wrote a book entitled America in 2040, Still a Superpower, ? Because it's a question. The answer is yes, if we do certain things, and no, if we don't do certain things, and they're all outlined in the book. But basically what I talked about is it takes four things to be a superpower today: global economic power, global diplomatic influence, global military capability, and global cultural influence. And we're the only country until recently that met all four of those criteria. The Soviet Union never met it. Russia doesn't meet it. But China does now, and they're emerging. And quite frankly, we're in decline, in part because we can't put our finances in order. We don't have a plan. We don't have a priority straight. And in the book, I talked about an alliance against U.S. interests in all four dimensions, led by China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And those things are manifesting themselves right now. What's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Gaza and in Israel, what potentially could happen with regard to Taiwan. And so we need to recognize reality and start making some changes in order to be able to address some large known and growing challenges that threaten our collective future.
Yeah, and I can't agree more. One of the things, Dave, we see a lot, and I believe it's used as a little bit of a political wedge from time to time. It's talking about the debt ceiling. Hey, should we raise the ceiling? Should we not? What's going to happen? Are we going to shut down the government? We hear all these conversations. What are your thoughts on that as far as, kind of getting that in order and then really fiscal policy for this country? If we had to say and lay out a 3-step plan, and it's probably bigger than that and greater than that, but 3-step plan for fiscal policy, because, it's the old story of when you take care of your own house, you're then able to help others well. And so what does that look like for you as far as fiscal policy, the debt ceiling, and people using it kind of as a manipulative tool?
Well, I testified before the House Budget Committee back this spring, and I gave them a 3-step plan in order to be able to restore fiscal sanity and sustainability. Step 1, you need to cut current spending as compared to the baseline. If you look at 2019, which was the year before COVID, and 2023, which is only 4 years later, federal spending has gone up post-COVID. 2023 is post-COVID, 40%. 40% in 4 years, whereas inflation has been less than half of that. By the way, there's a connection. The excess spending created loose monetary policy, which stoked additional inflation, so they're interrelated. So the first thing is to cut the baseline of spending. The second thing is to create a statutory fiscal sustainability commission comprised of capable, credible, and non-conflicted individuals who would engage the American people with the facts, the truth, the tough choices, solicit input, make a package of recommendations that deals with social insurance reforms, spending reprioritization and reduction, and revenue and tax reforms that would be guaranteed an up or down vote. And then the third one is the debt ceiling is a bad joke. It hasn't done anything to constrain the growth of government or mounting debt burdens. We're the only major country that has that approach. We need to repeal the debt limit and replace it with a constitutional fiscal responsibility limit that limits how much debt as a percentage of the economy we can take on, absent extraordinary limited circumstances. Those three things will stabilize us, put us on a sustainable path. It will help our economic growth, our individual opportunity. It will end up helping us with inflation. It will help us maintain our superpower status in 2040 and beyond.
So you're in a place, Dave, where you have a unique aspect and really focus here, because unlike many folks that are either outside the aisle or even inside the aisle, you were part of the fiscal responsibility and you saw the details of the numbers in the country for years and years and years. What are your thoughts in relation to that three-step plan? Cut spending, statutory fiscal commission, debt ceiling is a joke. We need to do something different. How do we?
That's the only thing that will bind current and future Congresses. Nothing else.
Constitutional amendment.
Right.
Okay, so how do we get that done? What's the fastest way to make this happen for the country?
Well, there's two ways to get a constitutional amendment under Article 5 of the Constitution. The old-fashioned way, which we've used for 27 times, which is 2/3 of the House pass something, 2/3 of the Senate. They then send it to the states. 3/4 of the states have to ratify. But the founders were very bright people. They envisioned that in the future that Congress could become so out of touch and out of control, or that could be certain issues where they had a fundamental conflict of interest, like controlling spending, like term limits, like campaign finance reform, that the states should have equal opportunity to be able to propose amendments. And that if 2/3 of the states, or 34, end up filing an application for a convention of states to propose amendments, not a constitutional convention, a convention of states to propose one or more amendments, then they meet. If half of them can come up with something, they send it back to the states. 3/4 have to ratify. Here's shocking, Michael. In 1979, we had 39 states that had active applications. In 1983, we had 40, and Congress did nothing because they don't want this to happen. And so I'm working with a group that's working with several states that we believe before the end of this year will file suit against the Congress, a declaratory judgment that would ultimately be decided by the Supreme Court that will force the Congress to either act through the normal process or call this convention where the states can do what needs to be done.
So you're saying these amendments have been filed, but Congress has done nothing with them.
The applications have been filed,
right?
But the Congress never assigned anybody to receive the applications, store the applications, and most importantly, count the applications. And as you know, America is not top 25 in the world in math. And I hate to tell you, but Congress